22nd, I think it is today, of August. So what have we
You and your dates, Gordon.
What comments have we had from our previous edition, Norrie, this week?
Right, let's get straight to the point, Gordon. Randall says, good show again, right to the point. Terry says, anyone can be a member of Salvo Liberation that's non-party aligned. Remember, we were talking about going to the UN. Rachel she brought it in with her saying that Blair didn't invent PFI. We're talking about that, and Jack McConnell sending back money. She says Margaret Thatcher used PFI to get the Skye Toll Bridge built, so it goes all the way back here. That wasn't the point we were making. We were just saying that free ports are akin to PFI. Derek says there's absolutely no one in the SNP that has the guts that is needed. All we are good at is playing the victim in Scotland. The people have no fight. We are indeed a joke to the countries that won their freedom with less. Remember I gave a letter out to you from Innes, I think it was, how we've got a parliament, we've got a judicial system, we've got a lot of things in place. The other countries who had less than that, but they gained their independence, and we're still battling for it.
Yeah.
There's a couple more. Rosie says, I never took to Forbes. Something just didn't ring true to me about us. And Peter says, Kate Forbes will have more time for her role in British American Project alongside Anna Sarwar. She's stepping down, remember?
Yeah.
And Alex says, there comes a time in everyone's life when they finally realise that no matter how you look at things, the SNP has turned out to be England's greatest asset. Strong stuff.
Strong words indeed, yeah. Just briefly, Norrie, just to return briefly back to the issue of PFI. Yes, it was an invention of the Tories, but it's been continued by both Labour and Tory governments ever since. Despite the fact that it doesn't benefit us in any way, it's just another one of these private market initiatives. But the other thing I was thinking of there when you were talking earlier on, you went through a number of topics there that came out the post bag. And as well as the PFI, what was the third one you came out with, Norrie? Just to refresh my memory, there was something in that.
No, good show. Anyone can be a member of Salvo Liberation. It's not party aligned. There's absolutely no one in the SNP with the guts that's needed.
Just to hold there a second. What I was going to say at that point was that do you remember when President Zelensky first went to the White House? And he was told by the American president that they had no cards to play, in this battle against the Russians. Well, somebody pointed out, I can't remember which commentator it was in the last few days, that every single small nation that gained its freedom from the United Kingdom had no cards to play. And they all left the United Kingdom. All eventually made it. He also pointed out, Vietnam had no cards to play, and yet they still beat the Americans in the Vietnam War. The Afghans had no cards to play against the Russian invasion, and they still chased them out of Afghanistan. It just depends on how determined the small country is to free itself. And I think Scotland still fits into that category.
That's a good point, Gordon. I was speaking to, and she'll come back into this conversation as we go on through the show today, but a German lassie who I met up the hill. She was climbing she was doing the Great Glen Walk, but she was in Scotland for a holiday, but we managed to get a chat. And she was mentioning a country called Serbia, it's about time we looked at this country, because Serbia's halfway between Russia and Europe. It's right in the middle. The European Union are putting sanctions, putting heavy play on Serbia to join the EU. And Serbia is going, nope, we want to keep our sovereignty. We don't want to go. And on the other side, the Russians are saying, look, you should come over with us. It's doing neither. It's staying a sovereign nation. And it's right in the buffer zone. Yeah. And she was saying, they are so, the people have been through so much with the Balkan War, etc. They've got constant reminders of the war in buildings that have now been shaped, a bit like Finiston Crane. You keep this remnant from the past to remind you, and it's from the war to remind them. And she says they are a brilliant people. They will not allow their governments to dictate to them. And I thought, that's how it should be. We elect governments to, and I thought Scotland, SNP, Freeports, SEZs, houses getting built, wind farms getting built. The communities don't want them, but yet the parliamentarians say that we should have them. That's not how it works, Gordon. And I just thought that's a very interesting dynamic from Serbia. And by the way, wasn't it Craig Murray that said we have a nation that will support Scotland's bid in the UN?
Yeah, and not just Serbia. I suspect there are other small nations that will do the same. And Serbia, in many ways, is like Scotland. It's got a big neighbour on one side that is determined that they should be under their control, and they've resisted that. But they've also, I think, wisely in this case, resisted the overtures of the European Union, because Serbia needs to be neutral. Because if it's not neutral, it threatens Russia. And we've seen what happens when West interferes in what I would call a buffer state, like Serbia and so on.
That's right.
We don't have that issue ourselves, but there are war drums being banged at the moment, and I noticed a Tory politician wading in saying Britain will soon be entering the war in Ukraine. Now, I don't believe that's going to happen, but the British state seems to be preparing us for that eventuality, which is concerning me.
It's concerning a lot of people, Gordon. There was another couple of messages I'm trying to find. I don't know what I've done with my notes. I think they're down here somewhere. It's about Nicola Sturgeon. Our book came out last week while we were on air, and we're talking a wee bit about it. Bit of response. See what you think. The Justice for me in Clack says Sturgeon is now proven to be a fraud, lightweight in politics. She had some 81% of Scotland's politicians. 81%, Gordon, we forget this, don't we? In both parliaments. There was a lot who supported independence, compared with just 61% who voted to pass the Act of Union. So if it was passed with 61%, surely it could be taken back by 81% of Scotland's politicians. And it goes on. We should be independent by now. It's not just a crying shame, it's an act of treachery from Sturgeon. Pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, and that's an opinion that seems to be spreading quite widely at the moment. But I think for me, the surprise in Nicola Sturgeon's book was her admission that she suffered from what people call imposter syndrome, and that she suffered from frequent crises of confidence, that she didn't feel she was up to the job, that she felt she was a fraud, and that she was pretending to be a leader. Now that's a bit of a shock, because that's not what she projected at the time. She projected, complete control, and complete control over the media as well, which was, to my mind, overdone a little bit, especially during COVID. But she gave the impression of being in complete control. In fact, she was an excellent communicator. She came over brilliantly, and it was a shock to me to hear what her inner turmoil was in that book. And that's concerning, because if you have somebody like that in that powerful leadership position suffering from those doubts, that is a huge break on her decision-making ability as a leader. And that's something you don't want in a leader. I'm staying fairly neutral on this issue of Nicola Sturgeon. I think everybody has had their say on what they believe she was like and how they feel about her now. But she definitely did not take the opportunities that were laid before her by her predecessor, and with the huge amount of support that she had when she started out as the leader of both the SNP and as the First Minister. And that has continued with Mr. Swinney, who appears to be just continuing the same drift, I think is the right word. It's a policy drift, and we need some direction, and a new leader and a new cabinet would be needed to actually make anything happen. The question is to happen next year in the next general election. the newspaper this morning, as I mentioned to you earlier on, Norrie, when we were chatting before the programme, one of the Glasgow newspapers, I think it was the Herald this morning, carried a banner headline saying that the SNP's deficit was now £500,000, which is down 100,000 on what was missing. But they also said that the membership is still hemorrhaging. They're still losing members. So it's not over yet for the SNP.
It's not over yet. Catherine in Glasgow says, remember, Scotland has never and did not enter a territorial union ever. There was a union of monarchy, but not crown. Two crowns were impossible to unite, as their definition cannot permit it. Then you had the pretended union of parliament on a proven annexation. Derek in Perth says, what has been revealed over the last week that because of Sturgeon, Scotland remains tethered to the Union by the neck, dragging us through all the trouble it has created. And I disagree with you, Gordon. I'm not going to sit on the fence about Sturgeon. We're now living with the trail of destruction that she brought. We aren't anywhere near independence. The trust in the SNP is gone. There's a few diehards who'll take to Twitter and they'll take to X claiming you've got to vote SNP 1 and 2. These are, I don't know if they're bots or real people or deluded people, but that's not going to work, because if you can't accept in this modern day and age, with all the information we've got, Gordon, on sovereignty, if you think Westminster is sovereign, like Stephen Flynn does, and in our book, Nicola Sturgeon adheres to that as well, then that party is stuck and they're not moving. And I'm afraid to say, Gordon, that I expect the SNP will, as Alf Baird predicts in his book, Dún Haud, that when we go towards our liberation, that party, which is being bestooned by the bourgeoisie, they're not for moving. They're stuck. They cannot move. And so politics within a Westminster government, which the Scottish Parliament is a melting. It's a glue pot. They can't get out of that. And so the trust is gone. They can't get people out in the streets to canvass for them.
No, I
They're
agree.
losing money for John Swinney said to 41 constituency branches, I'm not taking on what you're saying.
Yeah, and I've noticed there's been some statistics published that at least a third, possibly more, of SNP membership wants a complete change of direction. And the leadership has said, no, we're not going to allow your amendments or your motions onto the agenda for the next SNP conference, which is basically shut out all chance of change. And we've got an administration of basically inactivity, just continuing with things as they are. The other thing that changed, and I've been just watching, doing a little bit of research, that do you remember we were talking a lot about wind turbines and the fact that there's over 7,000 of them in the Highlands, and too many. And your piece recently, when we were talking about the plans for Loch Ness, with the idea of a storage system being put in there against the wishes of the people. Now, one of the things that was looked at was the amount of production that Scotland currently has and what will happen if that storage system is built. The calculation shows that Scotland would produce something like 10 trillion terawatts of power. It was an enormous sum. I may have misinterpreted that figure, but the basic idea is that Scotland would be producing 10 times more power than it actually uses. Right? 90% or more of the power that would be generated is going to flow to England through all these interconnections that are planned. And none of it, not a single kilowatt hour, have any payment back to Scotland for taking this energy out of our environment and all the effects that will have on the environment. None of it is recompensed. So we're basically going to be sucked dry of renewable energy, and we get nothing in, not a single penny, nothing. People will say, oh, well, it'll create jobs. Well, it will create jobs for people that they bring in to do the engineering work, who will then leave, and these
Mhm.
plants will run automatically or mostly automatically with a handful of people who brought in to manage them. So they're not going to produce local jobs. Just
Well, that brings us on to what's happening here then, I guess, in Loch Ness, because there's a big campaign, saveLochNess.co.uk. They've got a website, they've got a QR code, they're holding meetings in Drumnadrochit, which are being absolutely filled to the gunnels.
yeah,
And the problem, the real problem we've got here, Gordon, is the lack of transparency. And this group, who are full of academics, by the way, full of ordinary people, businessmen, the lot, have done a lot of research into looking at the planning permission and finding that high above the shoreline of one of the world's famous places, Loch Ness, like it or loathe it, it's a very famous place.
yeah,
A development that has been proposed will greatly alter the landscape and have us. It's not one we're fortunate to have. It's a blight, and I'll tell
yeah,
you why it's a blight. Because when you take power up the hill and release it as potential energy, that is potential energy in a crisis when we haven't got any electricity or England hasn't. That is a premium source to sell back down the road or back to even its people. And it's in the hands of not the government and not the people, a private enterprise. What enterprise, I ask you, say? Well, the Glenerick enterprise, who are part of the estate that are around here. So
uh-huh,
within this estate, they're using this for a shell company to come in and plead to the Scottish government for public money to start building this. Now, what we've found out already, Gordon, is the
how much,
development is the
how
Glen
much,
Eric pumped storage hydroelectric station, which will be 6 times greater than the one that's already there at Foyers. If you know Loch Ness and you look across from the north side, you look
yeah,
across to this brick building. It's a blot in the landscape,
they are,
and it's there with power. It's horrid. They're wanting one 6.5 times bigger than that. At the moment, it seems almost impossible to have a conversation about what's been proposed, as nobody knows anything about it apart from these planning documents. And what we've found from then is that we know, because they've done research on this, 670% increase in HGV lorries each day on the A831. That's the one at the back. That's a
yeah,
46% increase on the A82 road in
yeah.
Inverness. 46%, Gordon. It can't cope. 1,000 workers apparently will be drafted into Drumnadrochit. That will double the size of Drumnadrochit.
So where are they going to put all these 1,000 workers, Norrie? They told you
They've
that,
just built houses here, Gordon, that they can't sell.
but they're not going to give those expensive houses to temporary workers. They're going to have some temporary accommodation for them. They're not
If
going to be
the
there for long.
temporary, let me tell you this, Gordon, it's going to take 8 years to build.
That's still temporary.
I
You know,
know, but
it's
8 years rent in these houses will cover them.
and how many,
That'll cover the cost.
how many local jobs do they claim will be generated in the construction?
Oh, wait a minute, I've got the details here.
I know you're
These,
asking me.
there's none. The most important things are here from scientists. Citizen scientists have gone and found this out. Water level fluctuation. This is a real problem. This will alter the loch from a stable body of water with its unique thermocline into a tidal inland freshwater loch. Now, thermocline is when the temperature at the top is warm and there's a buffer in between and the rest is cold. That keeps invertebrates level. It keeps fish comparatively as nature intended. When you
Yeah.
start taking the water out and you start moving it, you don't have a level like that and things die off. It is that bad. And when that happens, this is all the multiple pollutants that then rise to the top. temperature affects pollutants, and they'll all come to the top, and the water will be contaminated. So there's loads in this, and there's other things: noise pollution, blasting, non-blasting, day and night construction noise, increased traffic noise, ground-borne vibration, operational noise. There's going to be archaeological sites to be wiped out because we know there's Viking and there's Pict ancestry up there. We know.
One question: the upper loch that they're planning, are they going to be digging that out, or are they flooding a valley?
Yes,
they're going to
digging
be
it out, Gordon.
Right.
And this is the thing. No impact to the local economy, and tourism has been considered. That's why the locals here don't want this change, because they rely on tourism. If that goes, all their efforts and their cash are going down the Swanee. There's going to be an interruption to the water supply, and there's going to be pollution in our water supply.
That sounds odd. How is it going to pollute the water supply? I mean, or interrupt it?
Because the water we get from Loch Ness, the downslide from the oils that they're blasting, the rocks that's coming down full of detonators, all that's going to come down into the water. Yeah. It's going to go through the water, and they'll have to block it off because we can't drink our own water.
The other thing is Loch Ness is full of very cold water, and if the water in the upper holding reservoir is warmer and it floods down into the cold water of the loch, it's going to disturb all the sediments, as you say, and lift all the pollutants up to the top, which is where the wildlife, where the fish and the other creatures live. Going to kill them.
Right.
All right.
That's right. And in fact, you've taken the powder from my gun here, because not only that, there's a visual impact. Views from residential properties are going to be greatly impacted. Now, this is very, very important, Gordon, because people buy their houses, and we're talking about middle class, upper class being affected by this. They're coming down to these meetings. So it's not just the grassroots, it's everybody's coming in to object to this. Recreational routes are going to be disturbed. I took a walk up Muirfield Vonnie. It's a beautiful hill just up the back. And when I got to the top, Gordon, I was disgusted. I hadn't realised there's all these big roads leading up, and you've got to cross them. You can't go on them. And you're shepherded up a path. It wasn't that before. And when you get to the top, guess what you see? Thousands, well, hundreds of wind turbines up in our hills.
Tell me now, are they also fencing the area off for grouse moors?
Yes, they are. When you go up there, we don't know, Gordon. That's the thing. It's just a big fence. And what they've done, people who know this route, you'll come to a fence, and they put a big step ladder over it, so you have to go over this fence and dip back down the other side and on the path again.
That'll be a deer fence, probably about 6 foot high.
10 foot high.
So that'll be to keep the deer out of the heather, so the grouse have got cover.
That's right, because the deer eats all the stuff that's.
Or to keep the deer in so they can shoot them.
That's right. But the recreational routes, the views from Caledonia Way, the Great Glen Walk, the Loch Ness 360 Trail, and the South Boyers Trail, going to be interrupted. They're going to be blocked off. So we can't even walk in our hills while this goes on. We can't even walk in our hills. It goes on, Gordon. It goes on, and I've taken 2 pages of this stuff from the website.
It seems that the Highland is being used as an energy production site, regardless of whatever the local people say, and regardless of the fact that we don't need 10 times the energy that they want to produce. This is basically, I think, the United Kingdom deciding to extract as much renewable energy as possible from Scotland at any cost, without any care at all for the way the local people feel, or the local wildlife, or how it will affect the environment, or, importantly, how it's going to damage tourism in the area by putting a massive industrial system in the middle of an area of natural beauty, which people flock to see. You know, it's a tourist attraction. Loch Ness is one of the biggest tourist attractions in the
It's a bonny place.
trash it. One of the things that struck me when you were talking about that a few minutes ago was many years ago, I used to live in a village in Ayrshire called Fairley, which is about 4 miles north of Hunterston Nuclear Power Station. In 1973, the Labour government decided to build an oil terminal right on the beach in front of our house.
Yeah.
I remember my mum, she was one of the very first of the Green protesters. In 1973, this was before Green was anything, nobody'd heard of it. And they protested for 3 years. They even kidnapped the Energy Secretary and held him to ransom. They lay in front of
Wow.
bulldozers, and they actually made the corporation that was building that oil terminal build an entire screen, an entire piece of land that came out to screen the horrible mess that they were making behind with a tree-covered series of landscaped hills. It cost them millions and millions of pounds to screen it, but that was only because the people protested. If they hadn't protested, that awful mess would have been visible from every part of the village and every part of the shoreline. Towns like Largs and West Kilbride and places like that would have been trashed. The beaches of Seagull, Fairley, Largs, nobody would have wanted to visit them because of this awful, great big industrial plant that's going to be there. And now they're talking about opening a gigantic subsea cable manufacturing factory on that site because the oil terminal never happened. Labour got it wrong. Then it became an ore terminal. That failed. And then it lay dormant as a deep water pier for decades, never really used properly. And now they're planning to build a place to manufacture cables to export all the energy from Scotland to England. None of it benefits anybody. And like I say, that early protest back in 1973 actually achieved something. It got them to screen it off. And it's something that the local people in Loch Ness might want to take a lesson from. If they protest loud enough and long enough and they take enough action, I mean, kidnapping the Secretary of State for Industry at the time, which is what my mother and her friends actually did. They invited him for a cup of tea into one of the local houses, and then they wouldn't let him leave. They kept him there. They said, you can only get him back if you agree to screen that mess off. And it worked.
Well, tactics that obviously worked, but I remember, as you were speaking there, Gordon, I remember interviewing Lindsay Ward, who's a campaigner here against the wind turbines developments, and she was saying she's been doing it for so long that she's now worn out. People don't do things like that anymore because the people with deep pockets have got more and more strength just to throw things in, and you've got to defend again for your community. Defending a community takes a lot. It takes a hell of a lot. To rampage over your community with money doesn't take much. You just employ people with plant hire and all the instrumentation that they need to destroy it. And if you get permission, and where do they get permission from to build, then it's easy. But to sustain your community to a level that's beneficial for the people that stay here, very difficult, Gordon. You get worn out very quickly. And I think from those experiences in the past, the British government have become more and more right-wing in their agenda to make sure that it never happens again.
That keeps repeating itself is the fact that because we don't have any control over energy in Scotland, that's a reserved matter, allegedly reserved to Westminster. Why? Why is it reserved to them? We don't steal it from their environment, so why are they doing it to us? You know.
Well, this brings up a really interesting point, Gordon. Why? And what I want to bring in now, if I can, is Ross Greer, the potential Green the co-convener. They have a co-thing. I don't know how they work in their party structure, but
right up the road from me, Norrie.
Well, he is saying that we must take a fight. We must fight Westminster. We must annoy them. We must push the boundaries of devolution. And he says, for example, we want employment law in Scotland. Isn't that the thing we've been crying out for, Gordon? Somebody in power says, my party will do this, and it shows up the SNP for not being doing this kind of thing for the last 10 years. And this guy, a young person, by the way, he's got rid of the mantra that Patrick Harvey had of bringing the GRR and the LGBTQ plus agenda into the Green Party. That's why Andy Whiteman left. But if you've got this guy who's absolutely at the forefront of the Flamingo Land campaign, you've got him as a leader of a party who's now saying this stuff that's upsetting the Daily Mail and the Daily Express. Is this a good thing for Scottish politics, or is this just another virtual signalling?
I don't think this is virtue signalling. I know Ross Greer a little bit, and he's genuine in the way he does things. And actually, the Save Loch Lomond campaign, I think, is a very good example of that. He took that basically for himself. He took all that on his own shoulders to help run that campaign and publicise it. And it's worked. It's worked 3 times now.
Mm-hmm.
We're still trying to build the damn Flamingo Land there. And that fight will just keep going on and on and on and on. And it's whoever lasts the longest, Norrie. That's the way this works. If local people are prepared to stand up and resist it and keep resisting it until they go away, eventually they'll get fed up, because it costed them millions in all these inquiries and decision making and changing plans and all the rest of it. Corporations hate that. They eventually get fed up and say, this is more trouble than it's worth, we'll go elsewhere.
But one of the things that Ross Greer brought in, Gordon, was the fact that Derek Mackay, remember the old finance minister that was had to resign in some kind of disgrace of texting 16-year-old boys? Well, he's at the forefront of leading the campaign for Flamingo Land. So he's got access to the SNP for Flamingo Land. That is dangerous. If it wasn't for Ross Greer, we would never have known this.
That's true. And Ross is quite switched on. I mean, he gets an awful lot of abuse and attacks online. There's a real hate campaign being run by sections of the unionist press against him. So he's doing the right kind of things, because anyone who's knowing the Daily Mail has got my admiration straight away, no matter what the reason, right? If you can annoy the Daily Mail, you're doing a good job. So,
do you think it's what we need, Gordon? Do you think he can change the Green Party round to being this laissez-faire, middle of the road, to this hard-nosed, really punchy Green Party?
Well, that remains to be seen, but it's certainly he's firing the first shots. And if the Green Party changes and becomes more militant and stops being a middle-class, tea-drinking, navel-gazing kind of party that it's been in the past, then maybe it can make some real changes. And the Green Party has got good ideas. It's just they've been submerged under all this gender recognition nonsense.
Exactly.
And I think largely that might have been driven by the fact that its leader fell into that LGBT category and maybe felt obliged to do that because of who he was.
Mm-hmm.
But with Pat Harvey now sort of gone from the leadership, maybe there's now an opportunity for somebody like Greer to step in and change the Green Party. That would be fantastic if he did, because we need a combative party of some kind that supports independence. If Ross Greer is prepared to stake his entire political future on being more combative, more resistant to Westminster, and much more overtly pro-independence, he will win a lot of votes. Not just within his own party, but out with it.
I think that the more young blood we get into the Parliament, the better. And I think he will introduce back to politics that younger generation who, to be honest, Gordon, even me, I don't even watch PMQs. It's such a dull affair about backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
I don't even watch Westminster politics, but a guy that can take on and challenge at the very top where we want to, he's wanting to say the things we're wanting to hear. And I think that's a very, very important thing for a politician to do. The other thing about Ross Greer right now, you can see he's a very good strategist. He's now come out with this on the lead up to the elections next year.
Yep.
He's given a stark opposition to the SNP in that first vote and second vote.
Yep.
This bodes well, Gordon, for shaking the thing up a bit, if nothing else.
Well, I suspect that the Greer will only be successful if he can energise his party behind these policies. If he does that, and if he starts a groundswell of a new movement within the Green Party to change itself from its tea drinking, front parlour middle class kind of impression people have of it at the moment into something much more combative, much more radical, he will get support.
Yeah, I remember. It was Murdo Fraser was really angry with him when he managed to blurt out, "You sandal-wearing, lentil-munching party," to the Greens. Maybe that's the middle-class thing you're trying to get.
Well, that's the Green Party of the past, perhaps, being characterised rather horribly by a really nasty Tory who got less than never won an election in his life. So
I know. Yeah, coining millions at the same time. Unbelievable. We'll wait with bated breath on that one, Gordon. The other thing that's happened this week, of course, is fascism has turned to our streets. Immigration has become a top issue. And flag waving down in England has become very, very topical. You may have seen at Falkirk a kind of flash group came across a hotel wanting to know why there was sexual offenders in there on taxpayers' money, getting a hotel and all the rest of it. And there's some kind of stories about maybe one or two have been charged with that kind of thing. But in every one that's
guy.
it, God, that's it. In every society, I'm afraid there's going to be malcreants and there's going to be all kinds of dissidents that are doing things differently to what we are and what we set out as laws. But to champion yourself as the People's Party, the People's Law Party, and justice for the people, when you've got a right-wing message, we've got to be careful.
But this is an amalgamation of pretty horrible far-right groups like Britain First, and what used to be the British National Party, and they're a pretty nasty, homophobic, but also very misogynistic bunch who have little regard for the safety of women, girls, and children at all, and yet they claim they do, and they claim that they want migrants who actually they're in these hotels awaiting the decision on their asylum applications. These are not illegal immigrants. These are people who have made an effort to migrate legally and are waiting for adjudication. And some of them have waited for 12 years to get a decision on whether or not their asylum will be granted. Now, that's not their fault. They've been fleeing from wars and persecution in their own countries, and this little tiny group of flag-waving nut jobs is trying to say that they are a threat to our way of life. Well, I don't see that. I mean, the fact that they're using a defunct hotel, in many cases, these are hotels that would have failed in order to house these poor folk. And it's not pleasant living in a hotel room for 12 years. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Family. And they're not allowed to work, so they can't leech on society. They have to rely on the government providing for them. They're not being allowed to work. They want to work, but the rules don't allow them to. So it's not like they're coming in, taking anybody's jobs. They're not allowed to do that. So there isn't to jobs. There's no threat to people's safety. One man was charged with a sexual offence, but it's one single asylum seeker out of 600,000. That's a tiny minority. There are probably more sex offenders in your local bar every night of the week.
I know. But
And
it's that excuse, Gordon, isn't it? And all over Europe, we're seeing this pattern play out. I was over in Ireland for a holiday earlier this year, and the big issue in Ireland was immigration. There was mobs there as well. The Fianna Fáil party are not giving benefits out to the Irish folk, and the Irish folk are thinking that they're taking it. The hotels they're getting, it's the same pattern as we're seeing in Scotland and in England.
yeah,
And I was speaking to a German lassie, amazingly bright, intellectual young person, and she was saying in Germany it's the exact same. The immigrants from Turkey, they're all coming in from, and they're all Muslim. Why are they getting put here? What is happening?
well, the thing is, in Germany, I can at least kind of understand it because Germany is flooded with migrants coming through Eastern Europe. And they're talking millions there, not just a few tens of thousands, millions of people crossing the borders, either trying to settle in Germany or move westwards towards France and eventually to England. God knows why they want to go to England, because they're hated there more than anywhere else. But they just don't seem to realise it, you know?
Family. Most of it's family, Gordon. A lot of their family came here, and they've been bombed to smithereens in Syria, in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Afghanistan.
Like,
Oh, my family's over there. I'll go. And it's
so,
not. You're right, Gordon, because in Germany they've got far more immigration than we have here.
Yeah.
We've got a sea around us. It's difficult to get across. In Germany, you can just.
Well, one thing to remember, Norrie, is we don't have any control over immigration. That's London's problem.
Yeah, but that's
protesting outside the hotel should have been in London protesting at Westminster and saying do something about these boat crossings, because that's not our problem. We didn't decide to send these migrants into Scotland. Our government didn't say we're going to accept all these migrants into Scotland. It was forced on them. So, it's not the responsibility of the Scots people or even our government that those migrants and those asylum seekers are housed there. And if they tip them with hotels, what's going to happen? Where do they go? The hotel business is going to collapse. Whoever owns it, they've lost their hotel. So these people are, irresponsible. It's somebody's business. No real reason.
What I'm trying to drive at here, Gordon, is where is this all taking us? Where is in Ireland? It's the same. Germany, it's the same. And we know in Sweden they've got a real problem with immigration. It seems like there's actors making out to get a new world order. And we talked about Serbia, and we talked about Russia and Ukraine. There's the BRICS. And European Union is now discredited. The Germans are regretting and they're wanting out of it. EFTA might seem the best option for us, by the way. We don't want to go back into the European Union. It is crumbling as we speak. There's a guy from Cyprus, it's on YouTube, and he's an MEP, and he's telling about all the corruption, and he's getting knocks on his doors from all the others saying, "What are you doing? They'll find us out." And he's yelling it. He's telling how bad it is in the Parliament. And the two Irish folk that came out, voted out, have now been vociferous. Mick Walsh and I can't remember the other one. They've said it's a cesspit. Van der Leyen comes in and she rules over everything, and it's gone right wing. And Farage should have stayed there because it's a perfect home for him, apparently, in the European Union.
Europe has actually done itself down because if you remember the beginning of the Russian invasion, Europe dithered and dithered and dithered. They did nothing. Now they're talking about supporting Ukraine. Nearly 4 years of war have gone by. Ukraine is on its knees and Europe's still dithering. They can't decide anything, and they're too relaxed. They're too wealthy. They're sitting back in their couches watching it on TV saying, well, it doesn't really affect us. It affects everybody. Whatever happens in Ukraine, the whole of Europe. And nobody in the European Union's government seems to see the urgency in it at all.
You're right, Gordon. That's how it is. But here's the thing. Where are we heading to? could we be heading to civil war? Because when government breaks down, I remember doing this in university, and there's key factors come into play here for civil war. It's a big thing, like over in Ireland, there was civil war there, where the if there's a big economic crash, first of all, and we're heading to that way because there's no manufacturing business. We've got the City of London dictating all the money laundering. There's nothing happening. There's going to be an economic crash, Gordon, at some point. Unemployment will then soar. Inflation will skyrocket. Migration systems will collapse. You'll get services that are overwhelmed because they can't cope. And people are now starting to say, well, look at me. I can't get my benefits, but the immigrants can. And there's all this confusion. Why is all this in place? And when the systems get overwhelmed, the people take to the streets. The police can't cope. And when that happens, military are brought in. And when the military are brought in, you might say, well, there's no military in Britain. We can't even recruit. There's American bases all over Britain.
Yeah, there is. Mm.
And so who are our allies? Who we've got a special relationship with? What happens is when the country collapses, and look what's happening, Gordon, the immigration, inflation, we've got all these key factors in place.
Yep.
I honestly fear for what's coming around the corner, because Keir Starmer, and I'll tell you, this German lassie again, she says there's two people in this world who are doing the most damage. Keir Starmer and Zelensky. They are letting their people down badly. And she went on, that's for another day. But even she recognised Britain is going in a hell of a direction. So where are we going, Gordon? What is all this happening?
Well, that's the problem. The entire world is in a tumult at the moment. There are problems because America is being run by an idiot who has no idea how to run a country. He has no idea about foreign policy. He gets all his information from Twitter or X, and basically he just utters garbage. I remember listening to him being told by a Ukrainian MP that they needed to repatriate hundreds of thousands of children who'd been kidnapped to Russia. And his response was, yes, of course, we've done a fantastic trade deal recently. He just didn't answer the question. He answered a completely different question. This was Trump, right? This is supposedly the leader of the free world. He hasn't got a clue. And
well, can I come in there, Gordon?
Protecting Europe. Europe is going to have to protect itself. The entire world
but here's the problem, Gordon. Getting back to this German, I wish I was still doing Caledon radio. I would interview her and get this on air and capture it. But she's away up to Fort William. I don't know where she is now. But she said, and a lot of people are now coming into this, Trump is angling his way. He's forgotten Ukraine. He's wanting to do a deal with the Russians. This is a new world order. He doesn't care. And she says, even the German economy, with these tariffs that he put up, Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen, profits went down, down. He doesn't care about Europe. He doesn't care about... the only thing he did care about was Scotland for his golf. And he said all the trade deals would hopefully come to Scotland. There's some madness there that... I hate the guy. I can't understand him. But on this one, he's playing the big game, and he's trying to get Russia. And this is the. It's hard to process, Gordon. It's very hard to take in. But watch in the next couple of years where the two countries are going to go. BRICS is the big, huge block to America. If you can get a new world order on these two big giants, that's what they're predicting. That's the predictions.
Even China's struggling at the moment because it has a problem that it can't export anymore the way it used to do, because of Trump's tariffs for one thing, but also because he's not wanting to do deals with China. He wants everything manufactured in the US. So Chinese are now unable to market their products properly in America and that's affecting
America.
as well. So whatever Trump is mismanaging affects the entire globe, because this man is just does things on a whim. He thinks that Putin is his buddy, and he wants to do a deal with his buddy. He sees it as like doing a deal on a hotel. As far as he's
Gordon,
that simple.
Gordon,
And
you've got to remember, he's just a face. Trump is on strings. BlackRock and all these big lobby companies are telling them what to do, where to go. The strategic moves we can't see, but all we can know is that he's talking with Putin. Putin's talking back. They're not as adversarial as they used to be. It's Zelensky gets rubbished in the White House for not having a suit, and he tries to make himself out the big man. Ukraine's the fall guy in all this.
Yeah. Ukraine is.
All I'm saying, Gordon, is watch this space. The geopolitical forces. When civil war comes into countries, you know that things are rocking.
Yeah.
These things are happening. And where's Britain going to be in all this?
But the writing is on the wall. When you start getting far right groups complaining about migrants stealing jobs and living in hotels, you know that things are starting to go wrong, and they're trying to stir up resentment. And this is what happens when people start getting frightened. They turn to whoever seems to be providing the simplest solution. Oh, I know, the simple solution is get rid of all the migrants and then everything will be great again. And that's basically their selling point. And people
It's divide and rule, Gordon. It's divide and rule. It's getting us busy on the ground while they do their stuff up here. Up the top.
There are theories, big global political theories, that the powers that are controlling governments, the big corporations, are engineering a collapse, a global collapse. So there will be some wars, so that they can then benefit from making the armaments for those wars. Disaster capitalism. And we are due for a big bust. We're due for this bubble to burst. The stock market in London is at over 8,000. It's never been that high. It's artificially high. House prices have rocketed to ridiculous levels that cannot be sustained. Eventually, it's going to collapse. And we don't want to be tied to a country like the United Kingdom, which still believes in free market forces as the economic driver. We need to get out, and we need to make our own way, create our own economy based on the needs of the people that live here, and not the avaricious greed of people in England who want the energy out of Scotland at any cost. But that's where we're at, and it's getting more and more urgent.
Well, do you know this? When I read Alf Baird's book, Doing Haud, there's a lot of it I had to reread and go over again. Ethnicity against civic, we're best to go with ethnic because we don't want people coming in having a vote. And I thought, well, I had to struggle with this in my head. And the other one was the SNP has to die because they are now part of the system. They are part of a system working in a system. And when we get that, and this is happening. Fianna Fáil in Ireland are corrupt to the marrow. They're taking the Irish a neoliberal route. The Irish don't want it. The immigrant thing is there again. The economy is starting to crash. I just heard from a very respected friend of mine over there running out of electricity. Energy is going to be a big problem in Ireland. And over in Germany,
we've got 10 times as much as we need.
I know. But in Germany, what I'm getting to hear, Gordon, is political parties have been soaked into this big crusade, and they're working within those confines so they don't get damaged that much. The people in these countries are the real people that can affect change. When I keep saying this, but this is reiterated to me by this German lassie. She goes, when the Scots went over to Germany in the Euros, and there was no Scotland, no party, what they did, and she shocked me with this, she goes, they showed the Germans how to have fun again.
Yeah.
The Scots people. And I thought, wait a minute, surely you've got your football, no, this was in the bars, this was talking about eye to eye, this was off iPads, this was not podcast, this was people talking over a beer. Yeah. This is people And she says it's stuck, it's sunk into the German people. So Scotland, through its people, and I keep reiterating this, us people, Sarah Salyers, Alf Baird, ordinary people, we don't give them titles, we just call them us, our people. When they go into the wide world, they do more for us than the SNP or any political party can do.
Yep.
Because they're not shackled, they're not chained to something.
That's true.
And I'm afraid, Gordon, anyone worth their salt is looking at next year's elections, and John Swinney saying SNP 1 and 2, let's go back to 2011, absolute balderdash. There's nothing going to happen. People are going to vote with their feet. Apathy's going to win. There's going to be a Labour, and then we'll have to take to the streets ourselves. And the problem I see, Gordon, when we've had the SNP in power, we've taken our foot off the gas. We, the people, have said we've done nothing because we'll leave it up to them. As long as they're beating the Tories and they're beating the Labour, that's good enough for me. But it's not good enough.
Well, it's not good enough. Norrie, imagine this. Next year, if the SNP vote collapses and we get a Labour government or a Labour coalition with the Greens or something like that, do you think that the Scottish Parliament is going to be dissolved? Because I don't think it will be. I think it becomes more relevant to the British state when Labour is in control, because the British state trusts the British Labour Party to keep Scotland in check and to run it as a province of the UK. And that's exactly what they'll do. The SNP has made itself irrelevant. I don't mean the members. I mean the politicians themselves have made it irrelevant, and it is now, it doesn't know what it is anymore, and the SNP members don't recognise the party that they joined, and that's why they're leaving, because they just don't recognise it as the party they once joined, and nobody would blame them for doing so. It's what happens after the SNP fails that really is the critical thing next year, because I do expect it to lose its majority, and they will either have a government with somebody else or the next biggest party, whoever that may be. And remember, it's the party who has the most votes that will form the government. It's not the party with the majority, it's the party with the most votes. Might be Labour next year. We just don't know.
Gordon, I don't know if it's the same in the councils, where the SNP could get 5 more seats than Labour, but if Labour join with the Tories, they can run the council. Yes,
that's called democracy. Yeah, it's when you get coalitions that you get the problem, and of course the party system in Holyrood is designed that way, so it produces coalition governments all the time. That's what it was intended to do.
Yeah.
It's unusual for a party like the SNP to keep the reins of power in Holyrood, because it's designed to prevent that happening. But if the SNP sink, then that's exactly what will happen.
Do you understand and realise that people will be watching this tearing their hair out because the SNP means everything to them? They've invested a lot of emotion, time. Well, so have I, actually. So have I. So have you, Gordon. We were all SNP at one point.
I have voted SNP for years before now. Even though I wasn't a member, I've always supported them until now.
Me too. Yep.
Now I can't support them because they're no longer have the policies that I voted for. They just don't.
I remember when they were exciting party, Gordon. They were building bridges. They were taking away bridge tolls. They were building big, huge. The Aberdeen Western Peripheral Route, when I stayed in Aberdeen, was getting built. Game changer. The big bridge, the Queensferry Crossing, a game changer. Things you can see. Yes. That we know we're heading in a direction. Since Sturgeon, what's been built?
No, all I see around me is infrastructure decaying and crumbling.
Yep, me too.
I mean, there are roads that I have to drive over every day, which I'm not kidding you, resemble apple crumble, the surface. And there's nothing being done about it. I mean, until somebody gets killed by hitting a pothole on a bike and getting run over by a truck, they're not going to do anything. And no money is being spent. To be fair to my local authority, they have made an effort to resurface quite a lot of bits of road recently, But I think that's been because there's been an injection of cash to try and stem the decay, in a one-off move. But it's not going to be enough. They need much more investment, and it's not going to come from the UK government. It won't. We're being
No.
starved deliberately. We're kept
Do you know
poor.
this, Gordon? When I was in Hamilton, it was when I went there. It was an SNP council, and the
Yeah.
roads were perfect. The grass was getting cut. The Jockstein community centre was open. There was
Yes.
lots to do. There was buses running, and then when the Labour Tory got in, we seen it crumbling. The grass wasn't getting cut. Contractors were now taking in your bins, and they were late, and you weren't getting them emptied. The grass was overflowing, and they shut down community centres.
Yeah.
So do you know what? The SNP have done well at local level. When you get ordinary people, it's when you get them into parliaments that the wheels come off, right off, and they don't fund these councils.
Well, Norrie, listen, I'm sorry to say this, but we've completely
Oh,
run out.
It's the end.
But again, it has been a very interesting programme, and I hope our viewers find the
I hope
topic
so.
today and maybe learn something a little bit new that they might not have known about, because there are other things going on in Scotland all the time that we never hear about because they don't match with what the British media wants us to hear. But anyway,
and Gordon, what I'll do, if I can just finish with this, what I'll do for next week, I'll be talking to more and more tourists that are coming here and getting the politics of where they belong to. And I won't sugarcoat it. I'll tell it as it is, and I'll write the notes. I've got so much to say, Gordon, about the German girl, but we've only got an hour.
Yeah.
If you want, tell people to ring that bell, the notification bell. Share this as much as you can. It deserves to get shared. We do this for nothing. We don't get paid for this. And we're only two people.
If they like and subscribe and comment, it drives the algorithm to show this video to more places. So the more people support us, the more helpful it is to us to make more content.
Right. Yep. Well, Gordon, I'm away to get angry again for next week. I'll catch you then.
All right, mate. I'm going to lie down in the dark room. I'll see you. Bye for now, everybody. That's it from Haud and Jaiket. See you next week. Bye
see
for
you next week. All the best.